didn't even use my classroom.
Like an auctioneer.
Start with old business. Any old business? All right.
I'm old.
Any minutes? I can give you the business. We don't have minutes.
No.
All right.
No minutes?
No.
We spent hours on this, but no minutes. Okay, preferred schematic design, PSR update by design team. That'd be Jones, what's that? And architects.
We've been assembling this preferred schematic report here. This is a binder that we'll be submitting. Right now it's in a draft form. We sent it to our cost estimators yesterday. And with this we'll get more refined numbers on all 7 options, but specifically on option 5. That's what we'll start tracking against the MSBA. We just wanted to go over some of the information that we're including in here so that you're all familiar with it and feel comfortable with it before signing off on it formally on June 3rd. We'll need that formal authorization on June 3rd, and then we can submit it to the MSBA, and it is due to them on June 11th. I've emailed a link to Chris Martin. And Chris, I don't know, have you had a chance to
Yeah, I forwarded
distribute
that.
that? Great.
This
So
doesn't come to me. Yeah.
I always send it to them.
Yeah, you can send it to the team this time.
everybody should have a link to the, it's going to the same Dropbox account that all of the other presentations that we've done so far are going to. So you can read it in as much depth as you would like. Tonight we just wanted to kind of highlight some of the higher points and some of the changes since last time.
What's going on at the high school?
Step up night,
Uh,
the 6 to 7 transition. I don't know if there's other things.
Almost getting. John's He's kind of left his ball. Yeah.
This is what happens when I say long issues.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that. So, I'm going to shift this over.
Click, what did you tell me?
Okay, so this is the table of contents very generally for the preferred schematic report. This is laid out by the MSBA. So we'll have a cover letter from Colliers from Alan, and then we go through an introduction where we kind of cover what's changed basically since the preliminary design program, which was the last report that we submitted. We talk a little bit further about existing conditions evaluations, talked about evaluating the alternatives, and then finally arrive at the preferred solution. So a lot of it is just kind of an update from the last report. For the introduction, I'm just in red going to cover what's in red and skip over what's in gray. So I'll go over what changed since the PDP, updates to the project schedule, summary of final evaluation of existing conditions. You know, we've done a lot of due diligence before we submitted the last report, so the existing conditions are largely the same from what we submitted to the PDP. Final evaluation of alternatives is what I'll cover in the introduction, just how the committee has arrived at option number 5. A summary of the preferred solution, and then this is a new requirement the MSBA has asked for the PDP, their review, and a copy of the responses that we sent months ago. So we've gone over that before, and we will include that again in this report. So overview of process and changes since PDP, we just walked them through. We had 7 options in late March. The school building committee voted to narrow that down to 3 options, all at the East Meadow site. And then on April 30th, voted to go for the East Meadow Elementary pre-K through 6 at Reno. In this section, we'll also include a list of all the meetings and public outreach that has occurred to this date, including what we expect to have happen on June 3rd. In terms of the updated project schedule, this is they just want a summary of the dates of what's changed since the PDP. So again, we're anticipating MSBA board approval in late July. We're hoping to get MSBA board approval of the scope and budget in late January, town meeting and the debt exclusion vote, and then starting construction in roughly February 2017 and moving in August, September of 2018. So those are kind of the 30,000 feet numbers. We have a long narrative, you'll see in the report if you read it, on the summary of the district's preferred solution, basically trying to convey to the MSBA why the committee thought this made the most sense. So we talked about some of the benefits of having all of the schools on one campus, that we're addressing 2 aging schools in one project, and that even though the overall construction cost is a little bit higher than a pre-K through 3, that the per pupil cost is much lower than any of the other options on the table. Existing conditions, so we have included a septic report that we have from Berkshire Design Group. That's still pending a final review on their part, and then we submit it to DEP, and then it's pending their review as well. But we have an initial report from their initial investigation, so we'll include that in this binder. And then we have a wetlands survey and a wetlands report that was recently completed as well. This is a review of some of the other testing that we still need to have happen. And a lot of this is going to be scheduled for right when school gets out because of MCAS testing and kind of end of the year functions. We didn't want to have a lot of drilling happening right outside of the school. The one that does need to be completed before school is out is the one on the very bottom, the traffic analysis, because they need to be sure to get the traffic counts, of when the schools are in session. That was just approved tonight, so we'll authorize that to go forward, and I think that will be able to happen before mid-June. Chris Martin looking at our reimbursable costs. So again, we'll have destructive hazardous materials testing in this building. Phase 2, that's looking at hazardous materials on the site. DEP Title 5, again, that's finishing the septic evaluation. survey and wetlands mapping is complete. And then geotechnical investigations, I think we have 8 borings, more or less, 6 or 8 borings that are going to happen out here to evaluate the soils to make sure that we design the foundation correctly and some of the site drainage as well. This is the next section. Again, I'm not going to go through the structural system narrative or the HVAC plumbing and fire protection systems, but I will kind of touch on the narrative at the beginning. And then, of course, at the bottom of this chapter is the cost estimate that we will have before our next meeting. So again, talking about the final evaluation of alternatives, we'll show that matrix that we showed to the committee a long time ago with the green and the red, looking at the 7 different options and evaluating all of the different pros and cons, then brought it down to 3, and we had a very complete list of the pros and cons from that school building committee meeting where those were recorded. One thing that the MSBA asked about is the impact of construction on students. So as an office, we looked at a phasing, very initial thought. We still need to talk to our consultants and take this forward, but I wanted to at least present it tonight that right now what we're proposing is that construction will start in the winter, the beginning of the year of 2017. So basically we imagine that the contractor would come in and secure the area to the south of this school, rearrange the site access, and begin work out there while the school is still in session, currently being run as it is. Same with West Street, would still be run as it is. During the summer of 2017, our idea is that they could potentially come in here and renovate the cafeteria and kitchen so that these 2 spaces could be updated. And then students would come back and continue to use this building, so I don't think construction would be complete out there yet. But in the winter of 2017, sometime in that time period, basically the population of East Meadow would move from this footprint to the new footprint, so that the contractors could then come in here and start renovating the existing school. And then would finish that renovation in the summer of 2018, and then in the fall of 2018, both West Street and East Meadow could populate the new building. Certificate of occupancy and be done. So again, that's very broad brush strokes, and I haven't even done over this with Alan yet, who I'm sure has some comments, and our consultants as well. But a rough idea on how to get the phasing to occur so that we don't have students moving into modular classrooms. We don't have to pay for that because that's not reimbursable by MSBA. And how to kind of minimize the amount of hoops that the contractor has to jump through so that that time period doesn't go too long and the construction costs aren't too high. So that's all in that area. Any questions on that? Is that broadly make sense? And then we get into more of the details on the preferred solution. Very quickly, I just wanted to go over, again, these are 30,000 feet overview, just to give the cost estimators a little meat so that they can grab onto some approximate costs and understand our approach. We have a 72,400 square foot building, be 1 floor. Most likely, I think it'll be type 2B construction, which is unprotected but non-combustible structural system. And then we just kind of go through concrete slab on grade, that our roof will most likely be, right now we're just putting out 75% metal roof, 25% membrane roof, that our exterior walls will be a mixture of brick masonry, potentially composite wood panels or aluminum wall panel. Again, this is all, I hesitate to show this because I don't want to latch on that this is what the final building is going to be, but just giving some general costs so that the cost estimator can get an idea of, that we're having solid core, wood veneer, solid doors that will last a long time, that we might have a roll-up door at the shipping and receiving area, that will have a mixture of linoleum, carpet, maybe a little bit of terrazzo at the entry, and get some of those prices so that we get a fairly detailed cost estimate that we can respond to. If we don't like those materials, we at least have a basis of starting from, what can cost more, what can cost less. So that's for the new portion, and then the renovation, we'll go into the details of that. Very similar for the most part, but talking about maintaining the brick masonry, anticipating 20% brick replacement and 25% repointing. Again, just rough numbers so that we can have a basis to start from. They asked for an updated space summary template. That's that spreadsheet where we've gone through the size of each classroom and the size of core academic spaces. So this is a space summary. So we did one specifically for the pre-K through 6 at Reno at the PDP phase. And now we're doing a specific one for what we've designed as of late. And as you recall, the design has switched a little bit. During the PDP, we had the cafeteria and kitchen in the new portion, and we decided it might be more cost effective to try and keep that in the existing portion. So some of these numbers have changed. Core academic spaces have gone up a little bit. In the report, there's a narrative that goes through and walks the MSBA through why all of these categories have changed a little bit. But the concluding factor is that the total building gross floor area has gone down by just under 4,000 square feet from what we submitted at the PDP to what we're submitting now. We'll show them the updated building plan, which I think you guys are all familiar with, and the updated site plan. We'll walk them through our updated schedule. So this is a schedule recently from Alan. It's very similar to what we've seen at our last meeting. Alan's also put together a schedule that takes us through construction, so kind of what our due dates are through that was a bit fuzzy. Maybe that's good. That takes us through, our due dates for going through design development. We submit that to the MSBA, and then we have 60% CDs, where our CDs are 60% complete. We submit that to the MSBA. Each time we give one of those submissions, we have to allow for 21 days of MSBA review, and then they get their comments back. But basically walking us through the point from town approval all the way through the end of construction closeout.
Is that a correct date? Ceremonial April 13, 2017?
I think this is
Ceremonial groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Well, we probably don't want to have it in February.
Why not?
I thought it was 2016. That's why I'm asking. I thought on a prior site, maybe I'm wrong. But
No, actually, the bids we're going to be doing, we're going to have a notice to proceed to the general contractor on February 10th of 2017.
Okay.
And then we're going to have occupy the school by September of 2018.
Okay.
So we have a building construction duration of 18 months and a start of construction to project closeout of 24 months. The process to, once we have funding approval from Granby to start the architects doing their documents for their bid documents, you can see that's the green bar along the top. It's about 9 months with all the review processes that have to go on at MSBA. The blue bar you see there is actually when we start doing pre-qualification of general contractors and file sub-bidders. And then the green bar, the olive colored bar is the bid process itself with getting the documents out, getting the bids in, and awarding. So it is a lengthy process that you're looking at.
This will be the last section of the report, is the local actions and approvals, and which we can talk about. Go to the next slide. So this is basically the information that we need from the town and the district that also goes into this binder. There's a whole section on the budget, so we need a budget statement for the preferred schematic and MSBA spreadsheet that walks you through that. Estimated town funding capacity, impact on local taxes, list of other projects. Process for project approval, we basically got that covered. And then the final thing is the local action certificate, which we'll need signatures on June 3rd. So that is a overview of this binder without going into too much depth.
Quick question.
Yes.
Are we doing a design bid build process versus CM at risk?
I would recommend it. I mean, the project probably lends itself to a CM because it's going to be a phased project. However, the reimbursement from MSBA is 1%, and the construction manager will cost more than that.
Okay.
So I believe that the project divides itself out simply enough to leave the students in West Street while we're building the new portion, do some transitioning to the students coming over when the new portion is done, and then do the renovation to the existing school. That it's manageable. It's not too wildly crazy with everybody flying all over the place. So our recommendation would be that save that money.
Any other questions on some of the meat in the report? Well, certainly, I know it's a lot to digest, but if you want to read through it and you have that link, then email me comments throughout the process, that's fine, or let us know on June 3rd and we can make those corrections. But I think that other than the cost estimate, we're really very close. We had some, our consultants are continuing to refine their narratives a little bit, but for the most part, I think they're right on. And having this deadline for us to get the draft to you guys has actually been quite helpful in getting the report prepared. So,
Any idea when DEP is going to make their final determination in writing?
no.
Well, we haven't submitted the report yet. So here's what we need. We need confirmation that the groundwater alarm system has been repaired. We need to re-inspect. Berkshire Design needs to come back out, confirm it. And we still need some population numbers that I know Judy is working on.
Actually, David worked on those, and I just got them via email, so I'm going to send them to you right now.
Great. Those are the things we need to do to then complete the report and send it in.
And any idea how long it takes them to respond? Whenever they feel like it, right?
We've been told to expect a month, but that can vary.
All right, thank you.
Great. Well, if we have time and are interested, we also have a draft of the public presentation for next week that we could, or 2 weeks from now, that we could fly through quickly and just get your comments and opinions. That sounds good.
I will say that before we start on that, I looked at this today and shared some thoughts with the design team, that some of the schedules that we just showed up there, we need to bring those down to a graphic level that's easily understandable from the general public sitting here and reading it. So we're going to be providing those to the design team to incorporate so they don't see these detailed schedules with all these lines and not know what that all means.
Yeah, the timeline that you shared with us maybe 8 months ago with the black background.
Right.
One timeline with big chunks of red work with your.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be recreating for this go round. Easy to digest,
Right.
pick it up quickly, sinks right in.
That'd be great. So, introduction, my general thought, I got a call from Jim last week, and he talked about a rough format, and it fit well into what we've done previously, was that the members from the school building committee would maybe start the presentation and do the introduction, that potentially Alan could take the MSBA process and timeline section, Helen or I could go through the existing conditions, and then one question I had was whether maybe goals and process would go back to the school building committee to talk about that, and then go back to the architects to talk about preferred schematic, and then back to the school building committee to talk about next steps and questions. But we can talk about that tonight in terms of who should do what. So it seemed like a good idea to just introduce who's on the school building committee, maybe go through some of the numbers and why they're on, that they're representatives of the school committee, representatives of facilities, et cetera, et cetera.
This is just a point, but is everybody here actually on the official committee, or is it a combination of committee members and other?
Those are all officially appointed members.
There you go.
And please let me know if that's correct or not. That's just the latest information that I had, and I also don't know if I have everyone's name spelled correctly. So let me know.
My name's spelled right.
So again, broad brushstrokes talking about the MSBA process and where we are in that process. This is the flow chart that's actually from their website, that here we are in feasibility study, just to let people understand where we are in the process. Like Alan said, I think it's a great idea. We just put these in for now to talk about where we are on schedule, but to simplify these is a good idea. So then we could pass it back to the architect, and we can talk about, just broad overview. Here's where we are. The statement of interest was submitted to the MSBA for West Street, so we concentrated on that, but the state was willing to look at both the pre-K through 3 and pre-K through 6 option. So we looked at 7 different options between West Street and East Meadow. Talking a little bit about the existing conditions of the 2 schools. We're all aware of it, but just to make sure that the public's on the same page. Talking about the age of the building and envelope, accessibility, security, all of the systems, mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, electrical, and then talking about some of the exercise spaces in each of the 2 schools. Floor plans of each of the 2 schools, just to get people familiar with what we have now. And then this is the part where I'm not sure, maybe this needs to go later. I think this should go later. But this is just a very broad overview of talking about, sizes of spaces at the existing conditions and sizes of spaces at the proposed conditions, so that the public can understand that, we're basically combining East Meadow and West Street, and we're getting some efficiencies from combining those 2 schools. But things like the gym is going to be twice the size of what both of those schools have now. Media center will be a little bit larger. Administration and guidance will be much, much larger to be able to support teachers working together, and more space for custodial and maintenance. That special education doesn't grow that much square footage, but the number of rooms grows considerably, so a lot more flexibility, a lot more breakout spaces, things of that nature.
Can I just go back to a small thing? But
Yeah.
this is the first time I noticed this. There's a big increase in the space for admin and guidance.
Yeah.
It's about 500 square feet, and I'm just trying to reconcile with some speaking points that we have about efficiency and all that kind of stuff, yet we're creating more space. But in some cases, leveraging staff because both buildings. So I'm just trying to
Right.
make sure we have alignment. So
I mean, it's tricky because in both schools right now, the administration is vastly undersized,
Okay.
especially at West Street.
West Street's like a glove department.
It's
ridiculous.
Do we need the MSBA column maybe on this one too, Christian? Or does that complicate it?
I thought it complicated a little too much. That I don't know if the general public cares if we're following MSBA guidelines or not.
Right.
But we could.
MSBA cares.
Yeah. So this was the part where certainly we'd be happy to speak to this, but it might be have more resonance if it's coming from the school building committee, talking about kind of the process we went through and looking at the 7 options, and evaluating those on the somewhat objective criteria, talking about phasing and costs and staff sharing, and that after evaluating this and lots of discussion, next slide, we arrived at 3 preferred options, all at East Meadow, and then kind of dove into those in more detail. Go to the next one. And then looking specifically at the pros and cons of options 5, 6, and 7. Again, all on this site, and that we arrived at option 5. And then we can go into the details of that in option 5. Site plan. And the floor plan, and walk them through. And then just talk about next steps.
It's overwhelming for me, and I've been involved, so I have a tough time. I don't think we're going to have hundreds of people, but it's going to be hard for somebody who's not close to this.
Right.
There's some pretty detailed schedules up there.
Right.
And I think it's going to be hard for any of us to speak to it other than you, and it's going to be hard for somebody to absorb it. And I'm talking about 3 of them. I'm talking, if you go back. Yeah, that's a tough one. Go back.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard.
Yep.
That's going to be hard. The other ones I think are good setup pieces, but then, speaking to 7 options,
Right.
I don't know what others should think, but
No, there's too much to
too much to explain.
Could you have so you arrived at these 7 options, and these are the things you compared with each of the 7 options, and you have bulleted points. These are the things we looked at when we were considering all 7 options. Boom, 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 boom. And then, based on those things, we decided on these 3. For these, maybe, and we have a couple of reasons behind it, what I was talking, and then, just because it's kind of hard for me to do.
Yep.
The other option.
So really even any need to list out what the 7 options are? We just say there were 7 options and these were the criteria we evaluated them by.
I just give the title. Option 1 was new pre-K through 3.
Okay, so keep
New
that.
pre-K through 6.
Yeah.
Or renovation.
Go back.
And then,
Which one?
The one that shows the 7 options. Yeah.
just use the title at the top.
Yeah.
Update for code. West Street add rental pre-K through 3. Just use those as your 7 options.
Okay.
The things on the left might be okay without the subbullets. The left column,
Right.
the big black,
Right.
might be okay.
Okay.
You can just put those as bullet points, Joe.
Yeah.
Full of them.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just put the location on top and then just list those, and then at the end, then we switch to East Meadow. I mean, it's good information for us, but people will not know where to focus, and all
Right.
this detailed stuff will be lost.
Yeah. Agreed. Great.
And you had, I was looking at this, even these, you had actually, in a previous slide probably, I don't know where it was, but you had bullet points as opposed to this entire schedule. Even that might be, simple enough for people to say, oh, okay, these are the dates that we should be aware of, that's it. Because here, Joe noticed something, and, I'm looking at something else. Again, people will get lost in this very colorful slide, which means something to us, but
Right.
people are not really involved with the projects.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't want to create work for you, but if you go to the slide that you've gone ahead.
I think it was the last slide on the PSR that you were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
The baby.
Right. Yeah.
The first one and then the next one, the second step.
Trying to think of a visual way to say the same thing there without all the numbers. Another sort of visual bubble or something that shows that, I don't know.
I don't know if you could graph it somehow, like a pie chart or something. I don't know. I'd have to mess around with myself to figure it out, but because people can readily see the difference between having mine and
What else you can do potentially? I don't know if it matters it matters to us again, but you know, somebody says, how much space do we have for core academic spaces? You can actually combine West Street and East Meadow. It will become one number. This is existing space. This is what we're going to have if we need to make that comparison.
What's the goal of this slide? What's the goal? Like I kind of get a sense of, in terms of what we want people to get from it. What is that goal from it?
How we arrived at 72,400 square feet.
Yeah, see, I think people are going to be more interested in what's the difference than, I mean, they don't know what 72,000 square feet means to us. Somebody, you know, maybe like obviously somebody like John Bear, very close attention to detail, but they're going to be most interested in, okay, how is this new space different than the old space? So if we're gaining, and then, you know, if we're getting more special ed rooms, they're going to care about that, more space for all these things. That would be all positive. But in terms of how we get to the gross floor space, we eventually might have some contracting people would know. The other thing I'm thinking is maybe we want to keep some of these slides in reserve on June 3rd. So when they ask a question, you're like, yeah, we're cool. You know,
So what if you combine the numbers, let's say core academic spaces, you have about 20,000 right now.
Yeah.
Compared to 21,000 and change on the other one.
Yeah.
You have one column, one bar for the current, and then just you have a second one next to it that just people can very quickly see where we were and where we're going to be in terms of space allocated for those functions.
Yeah.
Something like that would be better. You know, so that's from a different project, but that was a suggestion there.
Yeah, this one has an SBA. You guys want to keep an SBA?
Oh, we could take the MSBA out even and just have.
Well, that's definitely easier.
Yeah, this is much easier to
Existing
read.
rows.
Yeah.
Can you go to the next slide? I'm trying to see the sequence. So, is this out of sequence? Because the prior slide was basically saying we're renovating and
I think
adding.
the prior slide should go after.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about the numbers on the bottom? How critical is it that we lay out the numbers for all these? I mean, can we just put a range down there that says the range of all these projects were 13 and it?
I thought we were pulling all that out.
I thought we were going to pull out all of that
Okay.
information.
We're
Just say
pulling
they
out
were
all the
evaluated.
green red, I thought.
Oh,
I was
okay.
going to go with the title and then the left-hand column.
Yeah, okay.
And
Good.
Fred, anybody who really wants this stuff, it's got to be on the line anyway, right? So that's another thing that we have. People can focus on this for the rest of the time.
Right. Okay.
And then there is this.
There's this. And we've done a version of this where we would hand that out so that people could have that paper copy in hand if that's too much information.
Well, what's your experience? I mean, part of me says we should just talk about the option that we selected and update everybody. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it helpful to talk about the three options that we contemplated?
Like I said this last time, I think the most important thing is people understand why we decided to do add reno rather than just add.
Agreed.
That's something that we have to say because people I don't think are respecting that. What we eliminated, why we eliminated it, I don't know how much. I mean, I guess this would go to show that we've done our due diligence in making a careful decision. But how much of that information is really going to be appealing to people?
I mean, this is second step. The first step was right here. Where is it? Oh, going the wrong way. Right here, we had that colorful slide that showed all options, right?
Yeah.
This one.
Right.
And it went down to 3, then it went down to 1. And I agree with you guys that now we're down to 1. It's not a matter of what steps we followed necessarily, but what was the reasoning behind the final selection. And if we can make that clear enough, probably it will be much more valuable for folks to understand what the thought process was.
So for this next slide, so maybe we just include this graphic for option number 5.
Yeah, and that's
And
it.
don't show 6
Now
and
we're
7.
focusing-
Yeah.
But let's not underestimate the intelligence of our Granby residents and be very careful not to sound condescending when we're making our presentation.
But this is, again, available, it's going to be available for
I know.
anyone
I'm
to
just-
see.
What was the slide after
I'm
this?
just saying that tone, we got to be careful of that tone.
I don't think I have a problem keeping 3 there, because it's showing the pros and cons, how we went from the 7 to the 3. Here's what we saw for goods and bads about each of them, and this is what we went with. And then you get into your discussion at that point. And you're going to have this as a handout so people can just read along.
It's an option, because there is a lot of information on there. I mean, it's too much for a slide quickly, but if they've got it in their hand and then they see the slide.
And we can quickly slide through it to get to your next option, which is, here's our preferred, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do like a bigger bold line between the three, just to differentiate the
Sure.
three sections?
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's bleeding
more
together.
visual,
It's hard,
it is
yeah,
bleeding
it's
together.
hard.
Yeah.
Or a little space between.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if pros could be on top and cons at the bottom, and we would compare the pros and cons. I don't know whether it's better or not.
Across, yeah, parallel.
Yeah, so you would compare all the pros and you would compare all the cons.
I don't think you'll fit that on a slide though,
No.
because of the number of cells.
Okay.
You would, but it'd be so tiny you wouldn't be able to read it.
Okay, so this one stays as is, or
I
We
think
just
it's
we separate them.
Right.
am I going that way?
Yep.
Okay.
And this we've all seen, but then we would walk through the proposed site plan and then walk through the proposed building plan.
And that's familiar enough so people can figure out what's what, without too much explanation.
So just to, not related to this, but based on your presentation, when we start building, you said that the first thing would be to kind of create the paths to the site, right? So does it mean that the path to the current site, the East Meadows site, will be created first so that buses can go that way? Because we're going to be blocking the front of this way.
Right.
Okay.
That's my general thought.
Okay.
Is that we would do that new curb cut so that buses could do this new curb cut, so that buses could access this and use this parking lot, while basically the contractor owns that area.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the early look of what you're doing. Okay, and here's like the bullet point that they were talking about on the other one,
Yeah.
just like this.
For the dates. Great. Any other items that we want to have here? Any other concluding?
Something,
How about the town vote?
yeah, that would be the dates on that.
Right, the MSBA board meeting for the project funding
And
agreement.
you're going to want proposed town meeting date and
Right,
exclusion.
right, the February 8th and the March 1st.
I thought you had all that on a different slide.
Yeah,
Was it?
right. That was on
The other
the
one's
PS
on
Part of the
Oh,
This is the older presentation.
Right.
Merchant.
Got questions that I'm not sure you'll have the exact answer to, but will be important to the presentation. People, they'll understand the process better if they understand the reasons that we have to go through the process. The big reason is that if we want money from the MSBA, we have to do whatever they tell us. But why do they follow this process? Like, what are the basic principles? Why do they have, why do we do these studies? And I'm asking that question now, and actually, if I can answer that.
Yeah.
Well, they're a 50% player in the game.
Yes.
And so that they have skin in the game, if you will, and they want to make sure that the money's being spent wisely. And it makes sense, and that they agree with your decision.
So they want to make sure that our decision-making process is intelligent too.
Well, that it wasn't whimsical, that it was vetted, it took time, it was presented to you in a manner you understood it, and that you explored all the options, the design team explored all the options, and that there were no shortcuts taken, and that you came up with a conclusion as a committee, and that they agree with that conclusion.
And Department of Ed.
Yes. Yeah, DESE has to look at it too, and,
Well,
yeah.
I don't want to throw DESI out there because a lot of people just don't have Department of
Okay,
Ed.
and that's not something for the financial projects, but that's,
It's part of their process.
As we talked about the MSBA, maybe we can
I think that's a valid point though for people to hear,
Get that
because it
overall.
shows how much work has gone into it, and that it's not just this quick decision that was made, and we've had many meetings, and that, you know, I just think it speaks to the process, and I think that would be. If I was voting on something, I would want to know that people were going through a really extensive process in making that decision, and that it wasn't just something that, oh yeah, I feel, that sounds good. You know, so I think people would want to hear that.
Do you think it'd be useful to have a slide with all your meetings? You know, or no? And what happened?
I mean, we know
No,
we've had,
just say how long you've been.
we've had 15 meetings since, you know, we started the process.
Yeah.
And we know we started in July.
You know, what you could do is on your timeline, make sure that you go back to when you first started meeting, so that somewhere we can mention, you know, there was a whole third of this timeline was work getting to June 3rd.
and we actually
By
started,
this committee.
we actually started meeting before we hired a project
Right.
manager.
It was 2 years ago.
That's been mostly.
when the statement of interest.
With the statement, you had a statement of interest that you put in, and then, you know, the first thing to do is hire an OPM, you know, and then hire the design team, and here we are.
Like going back to that conversation about mentioning DESE or Department of Ed, whatever we're going to say, I think it puts education in this process as well. So it would be good to mention them as a player as well. It
Absolutely.
wasn't just the town coming up with a project or an SBA saying, "Oh yeah, that's great, we'd like to design." There was a lot of educational concerns in there that were addressed.
And it has to go through DESI for approval as well. Yeah, right. Because the MSBA really is just a grant organization. They control the funds for the town of law. The other thing after the slides is we like to have some reserve slides that we may or may not need, but one of the questions that typically comes up is a list of what is considered eligible or ineligible. And we've done that before. There's a whole, I think we shared this with the committee before, but you know, we'll have a backup slide for that. Another one, and it always comes down to money, is some estimates of construction project costs for similar elementary schools in the last few years. And so we can have a slide that lists, you know, 5 or 6 projects and what the construction value was and square foot costs were, so they see that, you know, it isn't like, we're not like here, everything else is there.
Will we be including our estimated cost as one of the columns?
We'll be showing the estimated cost in an earlier slide here, so they'll be seeing those options.
And where would that slide in here?
You have to put that is one that I'm sharing with the design team as well, that we need to create.
Oh, okay.
It'll be after that we'll put up one that just shows the dollar values, construction costs, project costs, and reimbursement to the town.
But can we put all that together in that one slide like that? Just to show, here's the cost.
We may never get to the slide. It's usually a backup slide, Chris. It's something that if they say, hey, how are we compared to something else? What I was suggesting, and we can pass that around, is just the options that we're looking at and what the estimates come in and then what the total project budget would be for each one of those options.
What do you think? Do you think people want to know after the fact or as they're going along how we compare to other communities or what other communities have done?
You know, the tough part about comparisons is that they're different size schools, they're done in different years, they have different site conditions, and the site conditions is a big one, because that can really, you know, skew a project's costs and nobody get a real solid understanding of what, you know, that it was apples for apples. I would steer clear of that as part of this presentation. We're here to show the cost of this project and what the needs are for Granby. But we'll have a backup that says, if you ask the question, well, here's what some other towns have done. Some of these date back to 2011, so they're old numbers. There's been inflation in construction. Well, let's
Durables and ad reno though, or are these all new?
well, that's the thing. Some of them are new, some of them are at reno, so there's, you know, it's hard to find apples for apples straight across the board.
You know, the one that we should know is like 3 miles down the road. You guys are involved in that, so how, just so we know, like how many square feet is that? What's the total construction cost on that?
63,400
Square
square
feet.
feet.
So just 10,000 square feet
10,000
shy of what
square feet smaller.
we're talking about here.
Okay.
Construction cost is?
God.
Maybe something.
24, 27, something like that.
24.
4 million construction costs.
So the total.
And project costs, I do not know off the top of my head.
But I think one key difference there is that they're not bringing all of their elementary students together in one site. So I think that's a key thing to remember is that it's a total new construction, but it's only for part of their elementary population, so.
We're doing pre-K through 6
Right.
with that extra 10,000 square feet, if not even. And then pre-K through 1 with 65,000 square feet.
Yeah, so I think those would
And
be
it's
points
a
to
bigger
just make
school
sure
system.
people understand the differences between the two projects.
You guys been busy. So the other thing that we should think about is we are going to field questions out of the blue, right? That are not even related to this, but what are you going to do with West Street? What's the plan for stabilization fund? What's my tax increase? How much will it be in dollars per month?
I don't think we're ready for the tax. I mean, I've been saying, you know, by maybe September, we'll have firm numbers on that. I wouldn't say that the tax increase is going to be anything more than between 5 and 10% right now. I don't, there's still a lot of variables involved. And I don't think, people are going to want to know basically what it's going to be, but I think that we don't want to get people too nailed down to specific numbers at this point. I would think cost of the project at Granby cost, you know, ballpark of what's going to cost, but I don't want to say it's going to cost 8.2% or $450 on your taxes every year when it could be $460 or it could be, you know, $410. I don't think we want people to be thinking that specifically about tax increases at that point. That's my thought. I don't. If we can, I'd like people to focus on the project and just get their head around the project, how much it's going to cost. They know it's going to be a tax increase, but not get too.
Not that big of a focus.
Yeah, not on June 3rd, but by September, I think that's when schools will be back in session. People are going to, after June 3rd, I mean, we can meet all we want, but I don't think we're going to encounter that many people over the summer.
There was a bullet with the MSBA approving the budget. What was that date?
January 27th.
Right.
That's the day of their board meeting that they will approve the project funding agreement.
So our estimates will remain estimates for our forecast.
And you lock in at that board meeting. Once, from this step, this is feasibility still. Design team needs to do a schematic design, which we'll be doing 2 estimates on schematic design and reconciling with those, so we'll get tighter numbers. So before this ever gets to a project funding agreement, we'll tighten down the numbers and the costs for this project. And that's what goes to the MSBA boards for approval. But once they lock in on the project funding agreement, that's it. There's no more money they're going to give you in the grant.
And that's the January.
That's the January.
So,
I just want to double check that.
see, right now we're talking about September or so, having a better idea. Is that a realistic point in time where we will have a close enough number to be able to start speculating at least about reasonable costs and tax increases and all that? Or could there be a variation between the end of summer
Sure.
and January, dramatic one?
Absolutely, that by the time, and then we're going to be doing estimates all along, in design development, we do 2 estimates in 60% construction documents and 90% construction documents. There's going to be 4 full-blown estimates done, one by us and one by the design team, and we're going to get together and reconcile them. So the numbers will float as the design gets developed, and at every one of those stages, you start looking at ways to save money, to say, value engineering, if you will, that you can do it, you can get the same effect for if you use this material or if you shape the building this way. Different things go on through that whole process.
Alan, I think what Emery's trying to find out, MSBA votes at January 27th.
Right.
When is the packet due to MSBA? Because that is really the date we will know what we are submitting for cost.
They either approve it or not, but that's the
Right,
number.
I think that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Well,
December 3rd, we'll know what packet's going to the MSBA.
So we'll probably know a month before the packet is due.
We will get our estimates back and reconcile them at the end, the 1st of November.
Okay, so you're talking November, not September.
So, first, in September, we can still start talking more ballpark, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah.
We're obviously not going to have the exact thing, but by then, I think it's a decent, gives people a decent amount of time to start thinking about it without, recessing over the numbers, starting in a week or 2. But if we start giving them, basically we're narrowing down things, so by the time December comes, they're actually very keen into where things are going to be. They're going to be probably within the range, and they'll be ready to accept and evaluate that number.
Are you planning to start the June 3rd meeting with why? Because when we first started meeting 2 years ago, we talked a lot about that, how we needed to inform the public why this needed to happen, but we didn't want to scare them because our kids are still attending that school. So remember, we talked a lot about that. And if you're a Granby resident and you're just hearing about this project and you don't have kids that go to West Street School or that have recently, that would be the first, well, why, right? So are we planning to deal with that?
That's why it's
Why? Yeah.
And then again, some of the underlying things, which we've talked about before, but they're repeating, are once you start try to bring something up to code, you trigger all those costs. You can't just make, whatever you decide to do, because the state has a vested interest in what they decide to do. So we can't just pick and choose. We can't do anything without the MSBA money, and we can't get the MSBA money unless we play by the MSBA rules. My guess is at this point, I don't think we're going to have a big argument about we need to just put a coat of paint on West Street, especially because I think parents are going to be the biggest advocates for getting their kids out of there. And we can certainly talk about things like first pipes.
So I think last week we had a small group meeting after the meeting for public outreach, and we laid out, we thought that it would make sense to have a common script, right? Because we actually thought one of the issues that we're going to have to answer is why didn't we just stop at pre-K through 3? Why did we include the renovation? Which we all think is a good idea, it's just we have to explain that. So we did put together some thoughts, and they are pretty consistent with some of the comments up there, but I literally just finished these from last week's meeting before I left work. I didn't send it to anybody. I do have hard copies, but I think our small committee felt that we should all spend a little time getting this to be pretty crisp, and then this becomes our elevator speech and our speaking points for why. Because I don't think we have to spend a lot of time explaining West Street is broke. It's more around why do you also do East Meadow? Because East Meadow looks fine to me. I think that's the big issue that may concern people. So I can send this, we can review it tonight, or I can send this out through email and just comment that way if that makes sense. But, I think think starting on the 3rd and then following up at all, any time we can, we should just continue to repeat. Message. And if we go, try not to go off script.
I think that's a good idea.
We'll see how it goes on the 3rd to see if the switching thing. For
Yeah, exactly.
the future, so.
Can you just send that out? I'll get it out.
Make sure electronically sure.
Yeah.
I'd rather look at it and have a chance
I
to
agree,
think.
yeah.
Try and-
And I know I have some typos and stuff here.
We'll correct your typos.
Joe, I'd like a hard copy tonight.
I have hard copies.
Because I missed last week.
So, and we sent out a press release
Yes.
and went back and forth with Joe and Henry. Sent that out. Get that one there?
Pass it on.
All right, and posted an announcement for June 3rd meeting on Facebook. They got 20 likes and 1 share, which is really great here, Michael. And
It's up on the school district website. I did a connected last night, so.
and I put it on Mass Live, which really dead these days.
So it's
And I'll,
posted on
I'll-
Granby channel, on channel 12 or 15. I got a confirmation today
Yep.
that the meeting is posted there.
And I'll put out another connected, like the Monday before, just to remind people.
There is one thing, Jim, and I don't know. if-
No, I was actually going to bring that up. She has not, but I did notice. So did you, so you want me to create the flyer and give it to the kids?
If you can, yeah.
Yeah.
If you do it for all schools, that would be a.
I can. I just want to make sure that I'm putting in the flyer what should be in the flyer and I'm not missing anything.
Yep.
So are there like a list of things that I should include? Are there certain topics that the outreach committee was hoping to have on there? Is it the date and kind of some of the information that would be in like the Connect Ed call?
Yeah, I think we're just going to keep it at a high level, just making people aware that, and I forget what the Connected says, it's something like.
It was straight from the script you gave
Yeah,
me,
that's
so,
right.
yeah, it was just,
Information,
the progress
building,
on,
yeah,
on the
West Street
efforts.
School
Yep.
Building Project will be hosting an information session on June 3rd from
Yep.
7 to 8.
Okay.
The
So I
public
can
is invited.
I can put together the flyer. Do you want me to, should I send it? Do you want to see, does anyone want to see it first before I send it out? I can make sure I pass it along to Dr. Gould. I can send it around for approval if people want, or I can just send it out. I want to get it out pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm okay with just getting it
Okay,
out.
so I'll get that out next week. Does that make sense? Because then it's the following week.
Yeah, right.
It'll give them at least a
Yeah.
week. And with the long weekend, there's no point in getting it out anytime before that. So as soon as they come back from the long weekend, I'll get it out.
Just so that I don't forget, I have on my calendar an SBC meeting first and then we go into,
And
Yeah, because we have
6
to
o'clock,
sign the document.
a half hour earlier.
okay.
We have to sign the document, the PSR. That's been missing.
Right, we've given a draft of the,
Yeah, should we
I'm
meet
sending you
different?
the script.
it's a letter to Diane Sullivan. It just talks about the meetings that we've had, and on the back of it, Mark, Chris, and Judy have to sign, and we need originals to send to them. They won't accept copies.
So I don't know if you heard this, but we're
Yeah,
going
I'm
to
sorry.
the media center from 6 to 7. Yeah, we're going to.
How much time do we need to be ahead of that?
Not an hour.
No.
We're just signing
So we want to meet at 6:30 then?
it.
Do you guys need more than an hour or is half hour enough on the 3rd?
I think we should probably quickly review what you're going to see with the public. I'm not sure we can change it at that point in
Yeah,
time.
because we have people that are not here tonight that are going to.
Yeah.
We'll do it at 6 here if we want to review ahead of time.
And then in here, how would you like me to set up? I can set up the table like this, push it back, and then have all chairs back here. We can take this, we can't, I was gonna say we could put it up there, but no, because the screen. We can have the table along the side, so that even chairs can be here. However you have.
I think we just want like
Draw
an
chairs.
audience
Okay.
chair. I don't think we.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, if we meet here, we go through this projection, it's going to get funky when people show up because it's going to be 10 of 7.
No, we're going to be in the media center.
In the media center.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and there's a projector in there too, so.
Should we address the kid issue in the flyer? Just say children are welcome? It's this is always an issue with our town residents, especially when it comes to, I just think it should be mentioned that they
It's the
can
only way
come.
parents can get here, and they come with the kids. That's
Yeah,
fine
just
with
say
me.
children are welcome, just to be nice.
We're only going to have 14 people show up.
We're gonna have
Just to be nice.
I'm serious, I've been to so many.
Right, right.
It's always the same.
Yeah, but you get all your other committee members coming too.
Yes, right.
Committee members are going to fill things up, and then, people are really kind of interested in this project. I think we may get a better turnout than we would normally get.
Would it be something to think about seeing if National Honor Society kids could do childcare?
That would be great.
They could do it in the gym. Yeah, they could,
Yeah.
in the library.
We're in the library, right?
That's early on.
Yeah.
We'll be out of there before they start coming.
I can check with John about getting that, so that I can add that to the file.
Great, thanks, Jim.
One other piece that has to go into the preferred schematic report is the overview of the community outreach. I did put up a draft and send it out, just an example of what we're doing at other school projects. If you can get me back your edits on that, one of the suggestions was to set up a website for the project, so then we can populate it with, as we go along, with what the concepts are. People can go to it. There's also the Facebook and Twitter accounts that we have done on other projects, so that there's public awareness.
Alan, we could do that on the district's website. We could have a page.
That'd be fine too. I mean, I mentioned in this draft, and I think I sent you a copy of this, Judy, also.
Yeah, I think you did. it's been,
Okay, I
Fast
just,
and Furious.
I want to edit it back
Okay.
to what we are
Okay.
actually doing, so
All right.
that the MSBA doesn't think we're just making some of this stuff up.
I'm sure
Well,
it's
we're not
very
putting
easy
anything
to
on Twitter,
email
I'll
here.
tell you that, right? Anybody tweeting this?
I know.
What?
I wouldn't know how to start
I mean, I have a Twitter feed.
I have a Twitter feed too, but I don't even really use it.
The other thing would be, and I'm going to be very honest, that as we look at an emergency operations plan for the district, one of the things that they do recommend is that the district has a Twitter feed, so that if you had an emergency, you could push information out. And I mean, to set up a
Actually, wouldn't
district
mind
account is no big deal.
I wouldn't mind having a Twitter account for this because MSBA itself has one, and I keep on receiving their stuff whenever they go on visits and all that. So obviously they are using it. It might be that they follow us and they actually get informed about some of these activities that we have. Because I did see that they are following some other school districts on their site, so it might be one way of connecting with them as well.
Someone has to take charge.
Yes,
of that.
who is-
I'll set up a feed. That's not a problem. I don't mind setting up because we can just set up a generic Twitter feed anyway and just use it for this and for other things. And this might be a way to get people used to following the district's Twitter feed. I don't have a problem
Give
with
it a
that.
hashtag.
Actually, yes.
And you can create a separate partition on the website so you can push information
Yep.
up there too. So those are your edits right there, I think, right? And Mark has already put stuff on Facebook.
Okay, so the Facebook is factual.
So those are the, yeah. Sounds like it, yeah. I think those were the three
If
highlights.
MSBA wants to join, they just have to ask Mr. Bale.
They don't even have to join. They can just look. They just can't post.
Right.
Unbelievable. Anything else?
I just want to let you know that we did send a notice out to all committees, invited to Virginia for meeting up with projects.
Just a couple of other things, Mr. Chairman. Last meeting, we talked about a server room and whatever else, and so David is here to speak to that. If people are interested in hearing that, because we did talk about that space in there and had some questions that, is it We talked to David while I drove him to Cambridge. He was white knuckled, but he did survive. And, but he probably can explain a little bit better in terms of what the needs would be in that 190 square foot space in terms of a rack and stuff. So you have 5 minutes, that's it? Though.
Yeah, that's all I need. When we did the last building, we went through this process several years ago. The standard that was being used was 6 computers in each classroom that would have to be supported by a network. So that was 5 student computers, and then that was 1 teacher computer. And then on top of that, of course, you had, there were to be computer labs, either hardwired or mobile cards. What's changed since then is that now we're looking not at 6 computers, but potentially a one-to-one scenario where every single student is going to be on a computer concurrently. Okay, maybe it's a little farther away for the very young elementary age students, but it's coming, and that changes everything. That's going to change. You're going to need a lot more switching devices. You're going to need a lot more bandwidth on a network to make that happen. The other thing that's changed is that a few years ago, the big buzzwords were SAN, your data storage systems that were in-house. You had to have a fireproof room and all that. And that's still somewhat true. You still need to have a good on-site storage system. But a lot of stuff is going into the cloud now, which means that bandwidth and that network infrastructure has to be all the more stronger, more powerful, and able to support a lot of data going both ways. A few years ago, and even to some extent today, a lot of data is consumable. It's coming down. Download speeds are very important. But now that we're going to cloud-based computing, the upload speed is becoming just as important. It was very acceptable up until recently to have a very high ability to bring down a lot of data and a much lower threshold to bring it up. But now those numbers have to be the same. The fiber lines that people are getting brought into schools and public building, they're making it so that, if you have a 50 megabit download, the upload is also 50 megabit. If you have a 100 megabit download, the upload is also 100. That's the new standard. That wasn't the case a few years ago. So that's where we need to be going with this. But I think the most important thing we have to think about is that we're not looking at 6 computers in a room. We could potentially be looking at 20 concurrent not 20 hardwired computers, but the ability for the network to support 20 connections. Either it's something a student brings in from home that they purchased, something that the school owns, whatever. And the other thing that is important is that everything's going to hang on technology. Technology is not going to be isolated to some administrative functions and to some educational functions, although the educational functions are most critical. But in a new building, you guys can test this all the better. So everything, your HVAC, your security systems, everything is going to be tied in. So when a network goes down, okay, it's not just an inconvenience for some classroom activities or for some office activities. The building could potentially, be shut down. So the important thing is to have a good, reliable system with backup features. Okay, so backup features to keep the thing running. One thing that we've never had in this district, which is becoming has been a norm in the business world for many years and is making its way into education, is redundancy, which goes along with this. Is that if we're running, if we have a file server, even if it's something that's very stable, if it goes down, yeah, we have a backup system, we have a backup of the data. But if we're running some critical operations, either it be educational, could be some testing program we're running, or some administrative operations, those things stop until we get the backup data restored to the system, which can sometimes be over a day or a couple of days. We need to have some kind of redundancy so that if something goes down, yeah, there might be an inconvenience of a few minutes or a short period of time. Another system that was mirroring it takes over. So those are things that we need to think about in a 5-minute presentation. So thank you.
For the disaster recovery stuff, the redundancy you're talking about, that probably would not be on the same site, right? That would be somewhere else?
Well,
whether it's cloud-based or...
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things you're talking about. The disaster recovery is one piece of it, but the other piece of it is a local redundancy. For example, if you have a system running, you need something else that mirrors it.
Okay.
Okay, so that if the main system goes down within a very short period of time, might be 30 minutes or whatever, but another system takes over, it picks up right where the other one left off. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to have an engineer come out and take your data backup and spend 2 days reloading it, being down for 2 days. That's what you don't want, or even longer.
And I think 100 megabits up and down would be at a minimum.
That's the standard right now is 100 both ways for 1,000 students is the standard right now. It's estimated by 2017 the standard is going to be a gigabit.
So as far as the servers and the space required or other accessories required for that space, what are we talking about? Is that what we're trying to determine right now and be helpful in that? Okay.
I think that's very premature to start talking about how many servers and what
Okay, I
types
just
of
didn't
servers.
know whether we were trying to do that.
But the other thing too is that there is fiber that goes into the high school from when MBI came through, and then there's a link from the high school to here. So that's another thing we need to think about is do we want to take fiber in from the street, particularly if the hub of the district is going to wind up in a circle up here. So I think that's just another thing that
Right now it goes to the high school and then from the high school
Right.
to here.
And that would be very important thing for someone to analyze because MBI was bringing these connections into schools. We did not have a lot of control over where they lie. They would say, okay, this is your demarc room, this is where it's going to go. And it came into the high school boiler room. And I think the way it was set up, which is, I don't necessarily agree with it, is that the fiber comes in, then from the fiber to your head end room, which is in the center of the high school, you run copper wire, which is okay, but you do lose performance. You do lose some performance. So that's something someone's going to have to look at because I don't know how logical it would be to have a fiber line come into the high school, then have a piece of copper go from the demarc room to one area, and then have it converted back to fiber and come here. I think someone's going to have to look at that. We could probably use that system, but the copper, in my opinion, definitely should be eliminated and replaced with fiber straight through if we're going to go that route.
Right now, is it copper from the...
It's an inactive. The connection was just put in by MBI, and it has not been activated because it would require a major financial commitment on our part, which we just don't have access to right now. But the fiber pretty much ends in the boiler room, which is the demarc area.
But again, whether you went with MBI or you went with cable, using the cable access, that's all fiber now as well. So again, it doesn't make sense to bring it along the street straight to this facility, particularly if it cuts in the network and the reader. And in my estimation, I would say that would be a critical piece of that.
The fiber line underground between here and the high school was installed back in the early to mid 1990s when we had those net days. So it's it's over 20 years old.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I have pictures, and I don't have to go through the whole PowerPoint on my computer. I can hand them out because I did print them. And I do have pictures because when I mentioned the words boundless playground and handicap access, people looked a little like, what is she talking about? So I did a little field trip to Belchertown today and took some pictures of Jacksonville boundless playground and hand them out.
Just for that you took Chris, we'll really try it out.
Huh? I was gonna take Chris, but he didn't want to go. But these are just some shots of what a boundless playground looks like. If you want me to take 30 seconds and run through these at the speed of light, I promise I'll be fast. I can talk really, really fast. Well, thanks. And how fast I can talk. Again, this was just another thing that was talked about last time, so
The thing I was think it was like, we get corporate sponsors to donate stuff.
Well, this
Like,
whole thing was built on donations. So, and there are a couple of parents in town who I think would spearhead a fundraising effort. And then this was built also with sweat equity on the part of a lot of people in town. So, basically what the big premise of a boundless playground is that it is fully handicap accessible at all levels. This is sort of just looking at the whole playground from one end of it. This shows some of the ramps that they're double wide so that a wheelchair can make a swing as it's going up the various levels, because obviously you have to worry about the grade. This is where one of the double wide things winds up, is that this slide, and it allows somebody in a wheelchair to be able to transfer themselves to the slide, so it's more independent for kids. Here's another picture of the slide from another angle. Then there are other slides, double slides that kids can go down together, slides with some tactile stuff for those kids who need that sort of sensory motor integration and feeling like whatever. There are a lot of tactile stations that were built in here. Here's a couple of them. Here's another one that can be accessed both from the ground and from the main structure itself. So there's a lot of tactile interactive stuff that kids can do. The stuff kids can climb on. And basically you can build whatever you want, but this is just an example of one playground that's done pretty well. Maybe you can go to a place where you can do learning braille with a ramp that goes up to the clock end of it. Some more tactile stuff that's part of this whole thing as well. This is a separate sort of tactile station that kids can play with. And if you notice, there's lots of benches around for the adults as well, because this was really touted as a multi-generational thing with the town. Swing set that includes regular swings, on the left some handicap, and on the right the heavy duty one, so that kids who have never been on a swing before get to do that for the very first time, and that's a pretty cool thing to watch. Big swings like that multiple kids can sit in, little seesaw thing. I saw some kids playing on it, but there was a parent standing right in front of it, so it wasn't a good
What's
picture.
the thing that's hanging from out the circle?
It's a big sort of cup swing. If you look at the next picture, which is that sort of seesaw thing, you can see it in the background.
Wow, gotcha, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
And then a couple young ladies were playing with the thing that spins around here and having a great time. And it was full of kids after school today. The principal came out to say hi, and she said that parents now, when they pick up their kids, they just go right over there. So it's kind of a
Is this on school property?
Yes. And then they also put in like adult stations so that adults could do some exercise kinds of things as part of it. And the surfacing is, it's a poured surface that allows a wheelchair, but it's got some give to it. So it's really cool. And this is just a picture from the front end. So it's got shade built into it as well. That kind of stuff. But that's just quick and dirty what a boundless playground is about. And I think it could be, would like, and be really thrilled that we went in this kind of direction. Because we do have some kids who live in this world now that we can't access any of the playground equipment we have, which is, I think, a shame. And to be able to make it accessible at all levels means that they may not consider peers.
That's the plan, Judy, there is a revised site parameters that I would copy to you that has a description. So it's in PSL.
I know that some people weren't quite understanding what we're talking about last time.
Thank you.
My iPhone
Thank you for taking the
snapped away, so. How about you, Chris?
More than 3 seconds.
I know you. Yeah, he is. He's a tough guy.
I'm still mad that you didn't get the pictures of him on that bucket.
Next time.
That'll be on June 3rd.
June 3rd slide.
All the other town leaders are here. we got fair enough. All right, anything else? If not, we call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.